Hello, this is Pam. Today we're going to be talking about the link between allergies and chronic disease. Many of us that fall subject or become sick with chronic diseases, we may have had allergies many years before we had that diagnosis of chronic disease. And there is a really big link, and it's really neat how it all ties together with what I teach all the time about how infections, chronic silent infections, are causing the disease symptoms that we're dealing with, but also the allergies also. So many of us suffer with allergies, and it could be seasonal allergies, it could be different types of food allergies. Before I carry on, I just want to say hello to a few people, just make sure you guys can hear me. Hi Misty, hi Marlene, hi Troy, hi Kim, hi Don. Great that you guys are with me. So we are talking about the link between allergies and chronic disease, and I can talk about this because I was actually diagnosed with chronic disease 29 years ago, actually 30 years ago now. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I have been able to beat this disease, stay in full remission, because I learned very early on that my disease that I was dealing with, it was caused by chronic silent infections in the body. And thank you so much for your love that you guys are sending. Please interact with me. Please type your questions in the question box. And we are going to really make a lot of sense today. And that's the thing, is that we are so away from common sense with our healthcare system, and it's time to hone it back into common sense. So number one, if you suffer with allergies, maybe you have swelling in your skin, redness, rashes, hives, sneezing, runny nose, teary eyes, itchy nose, all of those horrible symptoms that you can deal with. And those are caused by the release of histamines. And that I'll talk more about all of this. But there is this condition now that's becoming more popular in the health world, and it's called histamine intolerance. And it doesn't mean that you're allergic to histamines, but it means that you have far too much histamine present in your body. And some of the symptoms, I want to go over these in particular because many of you have these symptoms, especially if you have chronic disease. So not just the normal allergy symptoms, but also migraine headaches and the nasal congestion and sinus issues, fatigue, hives, digestive issues, irregular menstrual cycle, nausea, vomiting, and in severe cases of having high amounts of histamine, we can have abdominal cramping and tissue swelling, abnormal blood pressure. Who would have thought, right? When you really understand the biology, all of this, then you would know, but we just don't necessarily link histamine with abnormal blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, anxiety, difficulty regulating your body temperature, and dizziness. So those are just a few symptoms of histamine intolerance. That means significant amounts of histamine in your body. So where does histamine come from, and what is histamine? So histamine is a neurotransmitter. It is produced by an immune cell called a mast cell. And it actually is a really important molecule in our body, histamine is, in the right amounts. But when we have allergies and we have histamine intolerance, then it's over the top. And we have to figure out, okay, why is this happening? Because our body is genetically programmed, it knows how to operate, and we have to figure out why is it not operating like it should. So with the histamine intolerance, the mast cells are actually, there's something causing an abundance of mast cells to be produced, and it's called mast cell activation disorder. So mast cells are little immune cells in our body. They are part of our natural defense, our soldiers that protect us from infections, things like parasites and fungus and bacteria, and possibly viruses too. So they're really important. And mast cells, they have all these little granules inside of them, and they release different types of molecules. They can release prostaglandins, and if you've watched some of my other videos, those little molecules are called the pain molecules. So whenever we have pain, very often prostaglandins are involved. And sometimes they will release leukotrienes. And those are chemicals that are associated with asthma, where we have tightening of the airways and we have lots of mucus produced. And a third one is histamine. So we know that there's 200 molecules, different types. So these are really specialized cells that release very specific molecules in very specific situations. Mast cells are vital for normal function of our body. So it's not that they're bad and we want to get rid of them. There's just something that's causing us to have a lot of mast cells, and then we end up with a lot of histamine production and possibly some of the other different molecules like the prostaglandins, leukotrienes, etc. So we've talked about histamine, we've talked about what it is and where it comes from. It comes from mast cells that will produce them. But we want to figure out, like, why is this disorder happening? Why are we dealing with, let's say, allergy symptoms, and we're dealing with the mast cell activation disorder, where we're having so many mast cells migrating and moving into different parts of our body, causing all of these, a very wide range of symptoms that I mentioned. It can be gut issues, it can be pain, it can be swelling, it can be all kinds of immune responses that are an overreaction, right? It's almost like an immune dysfunction, and we talk about that. And we know through a lot of research that's been pulled together that infections can produce inflammation and immune dysfunction. There's at least 17 different ways that infection can do this in the body. And that is really what's happening when we have this mast cell activation disorder. So we always want to know what we can do about it. And first of all, can we treat the cause? Because that's what we always do with the Live Disease-Free Academy, is treating the cause. And so the cause, this is where we're going to use common sense. So if mast cells are immune cells, they're part of our natural defense against infections, do you think it's possible that maybe a chronic infection in the body is causing this mast cell activation disorder and a high amount of histamine production and prostaglandins, the pain, etc., the swelling, the inflammation? Yes, absolutely. And this is what drives me crazy, is that there's so much research that shows that when we have parasitic infestations, like whether it's just some type of worm, a nematode or a different type of worm, or protozoa, which are tiny single-celled sometimes bacteria, but they're single-celled parasites, and fungus like Candida. There are so many different types of parasites, bacteria, fungi that have been documented in science, and we will do a blog on this and give you some links to this where you can actually see it yourself. But these infections, they cause our immune system to react. Our immune system is defending us against the infection, and so this is part of the immune response to infection. But sometimes we have chronic infections in the body, and they go on for a long period of time for various different reasons. And this is where we end up with these chronic conditions where we have the chronic inflammation and the mast cells are involved, and we have histamines, and not just histamines, but prostaglandins. So it really helps you to see. And with the students that I work with that are dealing with chronic disease, we follow the Live Disease-Free system. And the Live Disease-Free system is really targeting the root cause. So number one, diet. You're eating in a way that does not feed those infections that are causing this strong immune reaction. So we're going low carb, lots of low carb vegetables, so lots of nutrients, because we know that certain nutrients are anti-inflammatory. And so we're doing that. We're really building up the nutrition, and we're decreasing the carbs to feed those bad infections. So we see already with the eating plan that we start to have a decrease in inflammation and people start to feel a little better. Then we support the body in many different ways. We make sure people are having regular bowel movements. We make sure that they're sleeping well, because that's another trigger to destabilize those mast cells if you're not sleeping enough. We get our students to manage their stress, because that's another thing that would aggravate this mast cell activation disorder and cause all of these various horrible symptoms. And this is all involved with cytokine cascades, etc. So there is a very complicated immune response to different infections that honestly the scientists, we know very little, and that was the neat thing. When I took my science degree, my cell biology professor, he said, this is what we understand today, But I can guarantee you that in 5-10 years, our understanding will be very different. So we do know that mast, this is what we know, that mast cells are immune cells, and they are very important in our natural defense against infection. So that's for sure, for real. So that is why you start to think, okay, well, if we have too many mast cells and we have all these different molecules, like the pain molecules produced, the prostaglandins, and we've got all this histamine, gee, I wonder if maybe we should really start to look at infection. And that's what we do in the Live Disease-Free system. And that is why people are recovering from incurable diseases, which is so cool, including myself. So the eating plan, number one. Number two, supporting the body in various ways, getting toxins out, dealing with specific heavy metals, getting them out because they can also destabilize mast cells and many other parts of the immune system. So getting the heavy metals down. Radiation is another one, decreasing the wireless radiation, because that makes those infections grow faster and produce more poisons, which will cause more of an immune response. So supporting the body in various ways, and taking plant source nutritional supplements, so building ourselves up, and then looking to see which symptoms we have. There are very specific symptoms for parasites. There are very specific symptoms for fungi and for bacteria, especially the vector-borne infections associated with Lyme disease. And so when you look at your health history and you look at all your symptoms, then you start to treat. And this is the hard part, because we don't have a lot of practitioners at this time and the biggest thing is we don't have a lot of good tests to pick them up either. The comprehensive stool analysis tests are falling short. They're not picking up the infections that are causing the biggest part of the problem. And it's really interesting. I was watching or listening to a video by a researcher, and he was talking about how sometimes they can look at the lining of the gut and it looks totally normal, but then they do a biopsy and they're able to do special staining, and then all of a sudden they see this abundance of mast cells in this normal looking tissue. So our test methods are not accurate enough, and we don't have to wait for really accurate tests to come. We have to take charge of our health. And that's what I teach people, is that your health is your responsibility. It's really super important to pay attention to these symptoms, because when you're dealing with the allergies early on in your life and you understand how your immune system is fighting infection chronically, then if you take care of it, then you're never going to end up with a horrible chronic disease like I did. And thank you so much for the love and the thumbs up, because many of us have hit the brick wall with our health. It is really awful. And then you're dealing with severe immune dysfunction, and not just the dysfunction, but just strong symptoms that are very challenging. And it's so much more work, and it's so much more costly to reverse serious chronic disease like the ALS, Parkinson's, PLS, MS. It's not impossible, but it's more work. Why not catch things early, right? So make sure to type in your questions, but basically we stop feeding the infections, we support the body, we clear out the heavy metals, we decrease the toxins, we start to treat the cause, going back to common sense, treating infections that are causing this immune response. And then all of a sudden we see that people can tolerate foods, they can tolerate the different things in the air in the springtime, the pollens, etc. I never recommend people to take a chance with anaphylactic reactions. That is something that you would have to, if you're going to test that, you do that with your practitioner in a very safe environment, because those are deadly reactions. But I have had so many students that when they first found me, they were living on antihistamines, and as they worked through this Live Disease-Free system and followed all the steps, then they were able to get off the antihistamines and be able to tolerate different foods and not feel so horrible all the time. And so the key is that there is this big link, and I have shared on previous videos about how with multiple sclerosis, we have learned over the past, I'd say, year and a half now, that MS is largely a parasitic infestation. And there is research that shows that when people have high amounts of different worms, even the small nematodes that are probably a big part of it, as shown by Dr. Alan McDonald. And if you haven't watched his video, you have to do that. But the key is that when you have these parasitic infestations, you have high levels of histamine, but you could also have high levels of prostaglandins. You could have pain and inflammation and swelling from all of these different chemicals caused by this mast cell activation disorder, which is probably just the immune system is overwhelmed, it needs help, and that's where we treat the infections and people recover. And they're having a lot more recovery than we thought possible. I can never promise people can walk again, but we have had students coming out of getting rid of their scooters, coming out of their walkers, getting rid of their walkers, and coming out of wheelchairs and scooters. It does take work, it really does. But it's what you do is you do the right steps, take the right steps, and follow through with excellence and see how much recovery your body can have. And I can guarantee you it's a lot more than you thought possible. I'm going to go to your questions and see what you have for me here. Hi, Misty. Helminth therapy has really helped many people with allergies. That is a really good point that you said. So there is research coming out saying that it could be beneficial to give people that have multiple sclerosis to infect them with different types of large worms. And I can't remember if it's the pig whipworm or the tapeworm. And these infect certain worms. They can actually cause our the inflammation to go down a little bit, but the problem in some ways, possibly. Okay, so that I've read some of the studies, and I don't know if you've read them or not. So it's one thing to read an article, right, that talks about, oh yeah, they're saying that parasites, giving people parasites will really help with their allergies. That is ludicrous to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't want a big worm in me. Parasites, they eat your food, they take your nutrition, they deposit their waste in you. They have their own microbes in you, and they infect you with whatever is living in them. All right. And the key is, when I've read the stories, it's like people have taken in the worms and they have not had a lot of relief. And then they want them out because they have so much pain in their gut. All right. So that's what makes sense to me. So I would like you to read the articles. I personally would never do that. The thing is that, yeah, you can try to mask the symptoms by giving yourself other worms, or you could treat the infections that are causing the allergies, and then you don't have allergies anymore. Allergies are not a normal part of life. They are not something that you're just born with, that you just have the genetic predisposition for allergies. Allergies are acquired. They are caused by infections, leaky gut, microbes, etc. And so that is the key, is to treat the cause if you want the best quality of life. But that was a really good point, because that is really hot, especially in the world of multiple sclerosis right now. So Katie, can a food allergy cause infection? No, the food allergy is caused by leaky gut, for example. So if you have, and it's not just infections that can cause leaky gut. We know now that glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, it actually breaks apart or destroys the integrity of the intestinal lining, the tight junctions. And what happens is different foods and toxins and things will go through the lining of the gut into our bloodstream. And then our immune system it just gets this response of like, oh my gosh, what is this doing here? This isn't supposed to do it. So it attacks it like it's the enemy. So infections can cause leaky gut, right? All of the inflammation from the infections, that's the war zone. And then also chemicals such as glyphosate can cause leaky gut. So it is really the gut dysbiosis, meaning you're really out of balance with the microbes in your gut, that cause the leaky gut, plus the chemicals like glyphosate. So food does not cause an allergy. Good question though. Hi, Gina. Hi, Tina. So you just now, you remembered that around the time your gut issues started, you also started to have horrible spring and summer allergies. Wow. Yeah, isn't that neat? It's so neat when it all kind of comes together and it's making sense to you. That's awesome. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Naji. Hi, Antrina. Hi, Rudy. Hi, Marissa. Hi, Tina. Hi, Sherry. See if there's any more questions. Hi, Maurice. Hi, Sherry. Hi, Allison. Yes, it is really helpful because it's so frustrating. This is not MS, chronic disease is not a mystery. It is caused by infections in the body, chronic infections you've had for many years that have gotten to this point. It's a tipping point where your immune system is overwhelmed and it just cannot deal with them anymore. It's caused by toxins in the environment and by nutritional deficiencies. But the toxins are mostly from the infection. So yes, things like glyphosate are a really big deal, but most of the toxins are coming from the chemical factory in your body, from those infections. Hi, Denise and Allison, and hi, Danielle and Margina. Good to see you too, Denise. Hi, Laura Lee. Hi, Maurice. Hi, Denise. Misty. Jenny. Okay, I don't see a lot of questions. So I hope that this has really helped you to connect the dots of why you are dealing with, okay, here we go. Maureen, parasites. No, thanks. I'm already interested. So that you're already infested. So that is, okay, let me go here. Laura Lee, I was on singular 3 extra strength reactant nasal sprays, etc. daily, and after treating candida and parasites, these allergies are gone. Truly amazing. So that's one of our students. We see this all the time, is that treat the infections, treat the cause, and then you have an amazing quality of life and you don't have to suffer. And again, the biggest take home is if you take care of symptoms like allergies at the beginning, you're not going to end up with chronic disease. I shouldn't say that as a total disclaimer, but that is a warning sign. These allergies are a warning sign that you're dealing with infections in your body, chronic infections that you need to deal with. And if you do early on, then you can avoid all kinds of chronic diseases. But that is following like the live disease-free system, where you eat in a way that you're feeding your body, but you don't feed bad microbes. But also this eating plan is also feeding the good microbes. The good microbes like lots of fiber. That's what they like from the plants. And we are having enough animal protein, etc. If you want to know more about the eating plan, then just watch some of my other videos on YouTube or Facebook, Live Disease Free. Also, I wrote a book, Become a Wellness Champion. And if you're at that place where you're like, Pam, I love all the free information, I've been watching your videos, but I'm at that place where I want to treat these infections, then watch my masterclass training. It's going to be linked right beside, above this video. And watch the masterclass training, reach out to me, and you can get started right away, getting ready, preparing yourself to treat these infections, to recover from chronic disease, recover from allergies. It is so worth it. So on to the last couple of questions here. Hi, Glenda. Hi, Cheryl. Would you suggest dealing with allergies like dust and dust mites in children? Again, if your children are really imbalanced, and yeah, I don't like mites for sure. I definitely don't like them. So try to use hygiene, like using specific covers on your mattresses, etc., and changing your pillows out. But honestly, when your microbiome, when your microbes are in balance, your kids are not going to have reactions to those mites, etc. So that is the key, is that getting the inside in balance. So we're in the program, we are following the eating plan, supporting the body, we're treating the infections, we're building a healthy lifestyle, we're chunking it all down into 6-month goals, and we are building back the good microbes. That is really important, is building back your natural defense. This requires building back diversity, building back hundreds of different types of microbes, not just the 5 or 10 that you get in a probiotic pill in the health food store. Those are not really effective. Go ahead and take them as long as they don't contain a lot of prebiotics, because that could make your symptoms worse. But they're really not going to make the biggest difference. Raw sauerkraut is amazing. Again, if you're really sick, you have lots of histamines, you're going to start with a tiny little bit and work your way up. But raw, especially homemade, where you can get the organic vegetables and you can chop them up and you can ferment them, and that way you have this plethora of all kinds of health promoting microbes. A lot of these different healthy microbes, when they establish themselves inside of us, they produce natural antibiotics. They keep the bad guys under control. And yes, we do have to build a healthy lifestyle. We have to manage our stress. We have to make sure we're getting enough sleep. But for many of us, the biggest thing that really turned this all around is there was probably a time in your life when you used a little bit too many antibiotics, because that's the biggest thing that devastates our good microbes, causes the parasites, fungus, and bad bacteria to grow like crazy. And then the stress and the poor eating habits and the not sleeping well and pregnancies and all these other things can really make those bad microbes move into different parts of the body, become more populated, and then our mast cells and other immune cells. And so that's why with MS, they're trying to decrease B cells too. And it's like, no, these are our defense. We need them for infection. Let's treat the infection. Let's support the body so that we can live our best life and we can live disease-free. All right, so that's it for the questions, I believe. So Sherry, if your right leg won't touch the ground, you need to treat infections, and you have to do that really effectively. And there's a good possibility that you will have more recovery with your mobility than you thought possible. All right, and what we're finding, I just want to mention too, what we're finding is that with treating parasites, when you have chronic disease, this is the last point before I go, that we're finding that the herbs are just not strong enough. What worked 50 years ago, and again, we don't know if it worked for MS and ALS and PLS, etc., but we know today that incorporating the anti-parasitic drugs, and usually it takes a few together, and layering therapies, so we're using oxidative therapies with the drug therapies and possibly a herb or two, a herbal remedy or two, that is what's turning it around. And again, these treatments by themselves are not going to work. It's the eating plan, it's supporting the body. All of it is totally vital to do all together. Those are the people that are having the miraculous turnarounds. So if you're looking for a game plan, if you want to live disease-free and you're like, Pam, I don't have time to figure it out. I don't want to spend time and money going from practitioner to practitioner. I want the right steps. I want to make sure I'm doing the right things. Watch my masterclass training, How to Recover from Multiple Sclerosis Naturally. And it's not just for MS, it's for anyone who's dealing with chronic disease or suspecting pre-autoimmune, etc. Watch it, reach out to me if you're ready to get started, and you can get started right away. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. And next week, I'm going to be sharing with you, I'll be back here same time, what is the best diet for multiple sclerosis. So we'll see you next week, same time. Take care and bye-bye for now.